Right, you want me, I know many of you, to talk to people I don't agree with at all. Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Conservative Member of Parliament, definitely falls into that category. Not here to have a knockabout, here to flesh out what he thinks, his worldview, a bit about him, his background. But I think this will be a bit of a treat. You have the record, of course, for the longest word in Hansard, which records the parliamentary debates in the House of Commons. Go on, can you remember it? Stare into that camera and through the barrel of that camera and say the word.
It's floxinochinihilipilification. But one of the...
It sounds like a condition, like a terrible skin condition.
It's not too bad. All it means is the act or habit of estimating as worthless. but one of the police officers is always saying to me that I've got to get in the name of that Welsh village that ends go, 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 which is endless syllables. Unfortunately, I haven't yet learned how to pronounce it.
I think it's fair to say you're seen as a colourful figure.
Sounds very dangerous.
But you embrace that in a way.
I think the interest of politics, and you find this too, you do exactly the same. You say what you think. And if you say what you think, that makes politics much more interesting than if you read a script that somebody else has given you. Perhaps not enough people do that, and therefore you get seen as being unusual for having done it. You
were once interviewed by Ali G. At any point in that interview, do you think, this is a joke, this isn't real?
No, I had no idea. I got a letter from Channel 4 saying they'd got this new interviewer called Ali Gupta and he wanted to interview me on this subject. So he had a full name at that point. And then he came round and he didn't change the whole time he was there. And I thought, the poor fellow, he's got this opportunity to be a new interviewer and he's asking these most stupid questions. He can't be any good at it. I'll try and answer the questions as best I can and be as nice as possible.
Even when he asked about having a relationship with his sister, do you think at that point...
I thought it was probably a mistake to give interviews to Channel 4, but they have a more unusual technique than some other channels.
If I married a man, would that impinge on your marriage in any way?
No.
But you don't support equal marriage?
I accept the teaching of the Catholic Church, that marriage is a sacramental matter.
So is it literally down to that? It's down to what you believe your religion tells you rather than the specifics of the merits or otherwise of a...
It's purely a religious matter. It's the question of what is a sacrament.
Does that inform any other areas, that Catholicism?
There's the issues that impinge on morality, but not on day-to-day political matters.
The Pope is a bit of a lefty in some ways. I mean, he's made speeches about capitalism that would make Jeremy Corbyn blush. I mean, do you listen to some of the stuff the Pope's been saying about huge inequalities, about capitalism, and you wouldn't agree with him on those issues, would you? You'd have a difference.
I have the greatest respect for the Holy Father's words always, and I think he's a wonderful Pope. And I think it's very important to have a Pope that concentrates on the Church's forgiveness rather than on the Church's rules. I think that's hugely beneficial. But he is not infallible when he's speaking about capitalism.
When did you first realise that you, Jacob Rees-Mogg, was a Tory?
Oh, probably Margaret Thatcher's first election. So probably when I was about to be 10, I realised that what Margaret Thatcher was saying was very inspiring and important, and that I was sympathetic to that.
Do you remember the moment she was elected?
I remember the 3rd of May 1979 because I stood as a candidate at school and I went in, I got all these badges that said Love Maggie, and I've still got one or two of them around. And I gave one to every boy in the school, and having treated the electorate, they duly voted for me, actually jointly with Anthony Steen.
So those Love Maggie badges,
won it. They had wonderful stickers. My favourite was I thought On the Rocks was a drink until I heard of a Labour government. Or if Labour's the answer, it must have been a silly question. Oh, it was terrific.
And you first stood in 1997, is that correct?
I did, yes. I stood in Central Fife, which was the last seat to have returned to communists, now called Glenrothes.
What was the response you got there when you were knocking on doors? Were people surprised?
People were astonished. Most people said to me we didn't know a Tory normally stood here. But they were absolutely charming, knowing I wasn't going to win, or it was very unlikely that I would win. I had plenty of time to talk to people as I was going round, who told me about their lives, which were very different lives from the ones I'd come across in what I'd been doing before.
Is it an urban legend you went canvassing with your nanny there?
Oh no, that's absolutely true. A nanny who has looked after the family for 50 years, now looking after my 4 children.
Oh, so it passes on. I was slightly surprised you in your 20s. I didn't think you had a nanny then.
No, she's been working for the family forever, and she came to help, but as did most of the rest of my family. So it wasn't as surprising as it sounded.
Jeremy Corbyn is obviously leader of the Labour Party, and you actually, it was quite interesting because when you want to have our own ECU, you made a bit of a defence of Jeremy Corbyn. He's not getting much of a fair hearing, is he, for much of the media?
He's not getting much of a hearing from his own side, let alone the media. You're dealing with really important things that could change people's lives, and so a little bit of invective, I think, is a reasonable part of it. I think most politicians cope with it pretty well.
This doesn't qualify as invective. In fact, I rather liked the term. You criticise socialist Yahoos.
Yes.
It's one of my favourite expressions.
Thank you.
What is a socialist Yahoo? Am I a socialist Yahoo?
Probably. I think a Yahoo is a sort of hooligan, isn't it? I mean, it's one of Swift's invented words. If you take offence, I'm very sorry.
No, not at all. No. I always thought, it's the sort of thing you'd get a T-shirt made out of.
I think you should. I think you should have a Yahoo T-shirt.
Start a line of merchandise, socialist Yahoo merchandise. Do you think some of that's unfair, though? Do you think it is a bit unfair in that the focus should be on the merits or otherwise of ideas and policies rather than quite vitriolic and personalised?
I admire the courage of pacifists. I admire the courage of people who were conscientious objectors in the First World War, and it goes against the grain of the nation as a whole. But if that's what you profoundly believe, actually it's a very brave thing to put forward. So I admire Jeremy Corbyn for doing that. I'm afraid it also makes him unfit to be Prime Minister, because there is always the risk that a Prime Minister may have to go to war. And you cannot have a Prime Minister who will not go to war.
Most civilians in Syria, in fact the overwhelming number, are killed by the Assad regime. They drop barrel bombs on civilians, which in one sweep can kill as many people as killed in the despicable Paris attacks committed by ISIS. Do you really think that is an improvement to end up with a situation where a regime that actually kills more people than ISIS?
I think Assad is unquestionably a very evil man, but regrettably our efforts to enforce regime change in other countries have made things worse rather than better.
But the issue surely is that the Sunni population, who constitute the majority in Syria, they fear Assad more than they fear ISIS, and it's very difficult to see how you can have a peaceful resolution to this horrific, sickening civil war unless you have a government that has the confidence of the Sunnis. Otherwise, they won't love ISIS, but they'll prefer to stick with him rather than...
There are no easy answers in this situation. I think a lot of mistakes were made early on. I think there was an irrational hope over the Arab Spring, which has gone very badly wrong since it started. What is the best way of getting stability in Syria? Well, probably, first of all, it's to get rid of ISIS. I think it's highly questionable whether there are other forces within Syria who are ready to take over in the absence of Assad, and therefore you probably are dealing with Assad, particularly as long as he's got the support of Russia.
We live in a very unequal society. Hundreds of thousands of our fellow citizens have been driven to food banks. Britons can't afford to eat, 300,000 of them children.
You know one of the reasons so many more people go to food banks is that Job Centre is allowed to tell them to go there. And under your government, they weren't allowed to do this.
My government.
Yeah, your government.
I'm
taking it away from Her Majesty and giving it to you personally.
Do you think the fact that people do have to depend on charities, we won't go into the details of whatnot because
the details are quite important.
But is it, do you think, a matter of shame that we live in a country where some people can't afford to
No,
eat?
I think it's a different thing. I think it should be a matter of pride that people are so charitable that they give food and requirements to food banks for people to get. However good the government is and however strong the benefit system is, there will always be people who are caught out that they've spent their money that week or they've had a sudden change in circumstance. There may always be gaps. And to have some charity that helps with the gaps is not unreasonable.
But if one of your kids ended up at a food bank, you'd find that distressing, surely. Not a positive thing, is it? It's not
I don't think it's a negative thing. I think if you're receiving support, whether it's from individuals or from the state, I don't think that's any different.
One of the reasons it's believed that people have ended up in food banks is an increased use of benefit sanctioning. And one example I'll give is a 6-year-old army veteran called Stephen Taylor in Manchester. He had his benefit stopped for 4 weeks on the basis he wasn't trying hard enough to look for work because he was volunteering for the Royal Legion. Would you look at a case like that and think, that's not the sort of society?
One of the most important things that any MP does is the surgery work when things that are perfectly reasonable in theory fail in practice. One of the things I have found most rewarding as a Member of Parliament is when people come to you and they've been treated appallingly by the system and you can get redress for them. But all governmental systems do make mistakes. And I think one of the virtues of the constituency MP system that we've got is that everybody in this country has an MP that he or she can go to get this redress.
I'll start with, just end with a very fluffy question. Fluffy question.
Okay.
What makes you happiest in life, and what makes you cry?
Oh, God, I don't cry. I'm
Never cry.
Well, not in
cry.
adulthood. No.
You've not cried in the entire time you've been an adult.
No.
I can't believe that.
I'm not in favour of this new age drippiness.
What new age drippiness? What's wrong with being emotional?
I think the British did best when they applied a little starch to their upper
You've not seen a film
lips.
that's made you cry? The
No,
Lion
no,
King?
no.
Simba
God,
dies?
no, certainly not.
It's very upsetting. We need to talk about the film. This is a really interesting point, serious point, because it's been discussed at the moment. No, it is, because men, find it difficult to talk about their feelings, and the biggest killer of men under 50 is suicide. Over 3/4 of suicides in this, and you've got men who have anxiety and depression, but they can't talk about it because it's seen as dripping.
I think people who have depression and so on ought to get such help as is available. But I don't think that talking about one's inner self is particularly interesting to other people.
When are you at your best, your happiest?
Oh, invariably in Somerset.
Back in Somerset.
Back in Somerset, at home with the children.
You've got 3 kids? 4 kids?
4 and a 5th on the way. So lots of children.
Congratulations.
They're all quite young.
5 children.
And being at home with my family is wonderful. Absolutely love it. Making my poor children watch another James Bond film.
James Bond, that's
Okay,
your weakness.
I'm afraid so,
I
yes.
found it, Miley.
I've got lots of weaknesses, yes.
Jacob,
Great,
it's a pleasure.
thank you so much.
Great to see you. Great to see you. Obviously, what you're going to take away from that interview is I got the Lion King wrong. It's Mufasa who dies, not Simba. Simba's a little lion. I enjoyed that though. It was a pleasure. He's a colourful figure. It's nice to meet people you disagree with. I think it helps clarify your own views. So it was a good laugh. If you want more of these interviews, and I think we've done some corkers, if I say so myself, it's in the top right of this screen, this box that I'm currently trapped in. Yeah, we've got many more interviews to come. Keep your ideas coming, subscribe, spread the word, and I'll see you next time.